one of the runners, or well, one of the situations going on around the Olympics, ShaCarri,
The Olympics.
the, the ShaCarri Richardson tested positive for marijuana as she was competing for the Olympic trials, and from the sounds of it, it seems like she got suspended for about 30 days, but she will be eligible to run in the Olympics. Guys, how do you feel about the situation?
Well, no, she won't be able to run in the Olympics. They banned her from running.
So is it actually a ban, or will the suspension not matter?
No, so I think like the way it's worked out is like, hey, we're doing this so she doesn't run in the Olympics. So she'll be able to compete in the Olympics when they return, but this 2021 Tokyo Olympics, she's out unless she's there as a supporter. So this is how I see it. Weed is not a steroid. It's not a PED. We all know that from us being MMA fans with the Deere brothers getting caught up in bullshit from the same bullshit. Weed should not be banned in sports and athletics. Actually, weed doesn't help you. It actually hurts you. But for the fact that she was still able to be the fastest fucking woman in the Olympic trials just goes to show the weed has nothing to do with that shit. So I look at it as this. Yes, was she wrong for smoking the marijuana, smoking the dope, all that other shit? Yes, she was wrong for doing that. Do I think that she should have been banned from the Olympics or banned from running at the Olympics? No. I think that's extreme and harsh. You know what I mean? I think that's overboard. If you want to give her a suspension or you want to give her a fine, penalty, whatever, so be it. To let people know, hey, weed is not bad, but for sports, we don't want you taking any form of drugs. But being like, she can't fucking run, that's ridiculous. I think that's a little extreme. And that's just my take on it. I know there's going to be some diehard, hardcore people that are going to say, oh, well, she should have followed the rules. She needs to go back to where she came from. There's a rules in place. Don't break them, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just kind of like, those people are dying on that shield for a particular reason why, which we don't have to get into. But us three know why. And I just think that shouts out to the young lady, and I hope she's able to come back and prove to the world that suspension, ban, weed or no weed, she's going to be the fastest woman in the world at one point.
I think when I see the situation, it's sad for her because I think it goes to show some outdated rules. And if you look at the way of the world, like I think a lot of people know and are making money off of marijuana at this point. I also think that if you look and see as to how things are going, you would see that a lot more places are actually legalizing it, medically and recreationally. So I think that a lot of people just see it and just say, like, obviously she did break a rule, but those rules are not good rules. And I think we should question rules if they are outdated. That doesn't make sense. Rules are in place for a reason, but it would make sense if we review our rules because times do change and situations do change. And I just think she just happened to get caught in a situation like that, and it's unfortunate for her. But yeah. I want to see her run again because I'm in the track and field, so I think she's going to be all right. She's still going to be fast.
I think no matter whenever she competes, I think she'll still be I still think she'll be the stiffest of all competition. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think she will probably burn out everybody that she goes against. No pun intended. I do think this whole thing is unfortunate. I don't really sit on a fence on this. I think it's just unfortunate that this whole thing happened. We do understand, like, hey, there are the rules that are in place. She even takes fault for it. And says, like, hey, her mother passed. I think her mother passed right before she did that race, actually. So that was her reasoning for smoking. But, I mean, of course, there's so many other things that could be drawn from that statement, depending on how people's perspective is, right? But I don't know. I think it's unfortunate that she won't be able to be in the Olympics. Initially, I thought it was just the ban was due to like I guess the when the Olympics start versus her 30-day suspension. Because I mean, the reality is other people have been suspended for testing positive. I think the biggest issue is the thing that people are pointing out a lot is that this is before the Olympics have started versus others that have received penalties afterwards. But hopefully, I'm hoping that there's a way that they can look past this because I mean I think as we know, like granted from a domestic point of view, like I think we understand where the laws are how the laws have changed when it comes to this topic, but I think even globally, I think it's just something that it's a rule that is unfortunate this had to happen to her, but I think it is something that needs to be revisited. Just because at the end of the day, like she's the fastest woman on earth. Not even just like in the sport, she's the fastest woman on earth at the end of the day. So, and she's doing this all with weed lungs. Like, like I'm serious. Like,
Yeah.
like it just goes to show you, like, hey, like this is not like another type of drug. It's not like she tested positive for cocaine or like perks or Adderall or some crazy drug or steroids. It's literally like, yo, the only slight that you can give her is that she smokes weed to relieve her stress. And
It's not even I don't even see that as a slight. She was doing it in a state that's, hey, it's legal to smoke dope. If she wanted to smoke a little bit of weed, that's fine. And I understand the rule, but I just think, hey, you can't fucking run at the Olympics. It was overboard. It just kind of comes off as like, hey, they didn't want her to run in the first place. That's what it comes off as.
I get where you're coming from. I think it's just that partial point of, like we said, like, I mean, I think this whole thing has resurfaced a conversation that needs to be had about the use of the rule, this marijuana rule. I do agree there, but I personally don't feel as though it was something that seemed deliberate. Where it's like, yo, at the end of the day, it was something that she tested positive for. It wasn't like something. It's not like someone said like, oh, your weed was in her blood. It was like, hey, this is some. She takes fault for her actions, and she says she understood the consequences to her actions. Probably didn't realize the severity of it, which unfortunately that happens. But I think that's the biggest thing. I think I would hope at least, but we all know how the cookie can crumble. That if this was anybody else, the same thing would apply. But
hey, man, history has shown.
yeah.
I mean, for the listeners who agree or disagree, we all understand rules are the rules. And we understand if we do things that bend the rules, there may be consequences of it. So we get that. And we're not saying she should be overlooked for bending the rules. But, you know, I just think that the punishment it was just severe. And it's just unfortunate for her. And hopefully hopefully she is the spark that changes these rules for the Olympics. No, I'm being for real, because it's like Nigel said earlier, it's an outdated rule. It's a junk rule. You know what I mean? Now,
Absolutely.
Every athlete and every sport, if you test them every week, your favorite athletes, most known athletes, they're going to be suspended, fined, can't play this, can't do that. As much as the media may not know or they don't want to cover, majority of the athletes at the professional level smoke weed.
The only thing that you can fault her for is just like doing it during that time span, right? Because like in the NFL, they always talk about it where, hey, they would say they would smoke, but they know, hey, during this time of the year, I cannot smoke anything because when they test us, I do not want to show up positive because a positive test just brings so many more issues. So, but I think at the end of the day, I still do agree. Like, I think they do need to revisit this rule, because it's at the end of the day, it's not like it's a hard drug. It's not like it's something that is spiked or anything like that. It's literally like, hey, it's a plant. And on top of it, as an athlete, I'm quite sure if she's allowed to take it, she can probably get the the right sources that will not actually do something else to her. So, yeah, like at the end of the day, that's how I look at that.
Well,